My father allowed his second family to mistreat me and said I will never be equal to them. After graduation, I moved out and struggled until my grandfather gave me his $50 million company. And now, they all started treating me well. If you ever want to know what it feels like to be completely invisible inside your own home, try being the kid your father sees as a burden, because he started a new family and decided that was his real life now. My name's Ethan Brooks. I was born to two loving parents, or at least I thought so. My mom, Julia, passed away in a car crash when I was 6. After that, it was like someone flipped a switch inside my dad, Richard Brooks. He became distant, cold, efficient, like a machine. Within a year, he remarried a woman named Tanya, and from that moment on, I became a guest in my own house. At first, I tried to see Tanya as a stepmom, someone who might warm up over time, but it was clear she didn't want me there. She was polite enough when my dad was around, but the second we were alone, she ignored me like I was background noise. Tanya had 2 kids from a previous marriage, Braden and Aubrey. They were perfect in my dad's eyes. Tanya called them her stars. Me, I was just the other one. Birthdays were the clearest reminder. Braden got a Nintendo Switch, Aubrey got an iPad and a party with a bounce house and 30 screaming kids. On my 13th birthday, I got a leftover slice of cake from Braden's party and a generic happy birthday text from my dad, who was on a business trip in Dallas. When I tried to talk to him about how I felt, he gave me one of those long sighs that said he didn't want to deal with this. Ethan, he said, don't try to compete with them. It's not about being fair. Life's not fair. You'll never be like them. And the sooner you stop chasing that, the better off you'll be. I was 13. And I learned that day that I wasn't just unloved, I was unwanted. From then on, I stopped trying. I poured everything into school, into books, into working odd jobs, just to have some freedom. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just numb. In high school, I worked as a grocery bagger on weekend while Braden got a brand new truck for his 16th birthday. I'd walk home in the rain, blisters on my feet, and a soaked backpack, and they'd barely look up from the couch. Tanya once told me, if you don't like it here, you can leave when you turn 18. Challenge accepted. After graduation, I packed up my thrift store suitcase, walked out of that house, and never looked back. No one tried to stop me. I moved to a small town outside of Kansas City, Missouri, where rent was cheap and jobs were plenty, if you didn't mind hard work. I rented a crummy 1-bedroom above a mechanic shop and took whatever work I could find. Stocking warehouses, fixing old computers, managing data entry for small businesses. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Some nights I slept in my coat because the heating was busted. Other nights I ate canned beans with a spoon because my microwave died, but I was free. I put myself through community college, 1 class at a time. Learned coding, took night classes in business, watched YouTube tutorials while eating ramen. There were moments I wanted to quit. When I saw families laughing in restaurants, it stung. But I had one silent mantra that kept me going. You will never be like them, and that's a good thing. Then one day, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in years. Ethan, the voice said, gruff but familiar. It's Walter Brooks, your grandfather. I almost dropped the phone. Grandpa Walt had been a ghost in my life. My dad's father, a legend in the Midwestern business world. He built Brooks Industrial Group, a multi-state manufacturing empire, from the ground up. Rumor was he cut ties with my dad after he remarried. I hadn't seen him since I was maybe 10 years old. I want you to come see me, he said. I'm in Chicago. No excuses. Come tomorrow. It wasn't a request. I scraped together money for a bus ticket and borrowed a button-up shirt from my roommate. The security at his downtown office almost didn't let me in until I gave them my name. Then they practically rolled out the red carpet. Grandpa Walt was sitting in a massive leather chair, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over Lake Michigan. You've grown, he said, sizing me up. Still got your mom's eyes. That nearly broke me. We talked for hours. I told him everything. No lies. I didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't interrupt or pity me. He just listened. At the end, he said one sentence that I didn't fully understand until months later. You've earned more than they'll ever deserve. Come back after you finish school. I've got something in mind. 2 years later, I walked across a plain auditorium stage and accepted my degree. No one from my family was there. Not even a message. I treated myself to a cheap diner burger and walked home in the rain, soaking wet, but smiling. The next day, Grandpa Walt called. Pack your things, he said. You're moving to Chicago. You start Monday. Start what? He chuckled. Your life. That was the beginning of a whirlwind. I was placed as an analyst under the executive team at Brooks Industrial, but it wasn't a vanity job. Grandpa made sure I earned every bit of it. I started in the logistics department, spent weeks understanding manufacturing, distribution, and vendor negotiations. I sat in on meetings where grown men in suits sneered at me until I asked questions they hadn't considered. Every Friday, I had lunch with Grandpa. He would test me like a professor. What would you do if demand tanks next quarter? How would you handle a supplier strike in Texas? He was grooming me for something. I just didn't realize how big. One morning, 6 months in, the company called an emergency board meeting. I walked in expecting another supply chain crisis. Instead, Grandpa stood at the head of the table, looked around the room, and said, "I'm retiring in 90 days. The next CEO of Brooks Industrial will be Ethan Brooks." Silence. Then chaos. "He's too young. He hasn't paid his dues. Richard is your son. This is his birthright." Grandpa lifted a hand. "Richard is a coward who married into privilege and let his second wife treat his son like trash. He lost his integrity a long time ago. Ethan's not here because of blood. He's here because he works harder than anyone in this room. I've watched him struggle, hustle, and learn with humility. That's the kind of leadership this company deserves." It didn't take long for the news to reach back home. Suddenly, my dad called. "Ethan, son, I heard the news. CEO. Wow. I'm proud of you. Why didn't you tell us? We should celebrate." He invited me home. Tanya texted me with a smiley face. Brayden sent me a DM saying, "Yo, bro, let's hang soon." I went back, out of curiosity more than anything else. Tanya greeted me at the door like I was royalty. The house hadn't changed, but the energy had. Brayden handed me a beer. Aubrey gave me a hug and said I looked totally different. My dad kept trying to steer the conversation toward family and forgiveness. I waited until dinner ended. "Do you remember what you told me when I left for college?" I asked Dad. He blinked. That was a long time ago. "You said I'd never be equal to Brayden and Aubrey, that I was wasting your money." Silence. I stood up slowly. "Well, Dad, that waste of money is now your boss's boss. Funny how things change." I walked out. Tanya tried to call out after me, but I didn't even look back. That night, I sat in my high-rise apartment in downtown Chicago, sipping cheap whiskey from a plastic cup because I still hadn't bought fancy glassware. I wasn't crying. I was smiling. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to prove myself to them anymore. I had already won. After I walked out of my father's house that night, I didn't feel angry. I felt free. For the first time in my life, I had nothing to prove to anyone in that house. I didn't need their love, their validation, or their fake smiles. I had built something without them, despite them. And now that I had the power they once denied me, I realized I didn't want revenge. I wanted distance. But distance, as it turns out, is harder to keep when you're a CEO of a $50 million company and your last name still binds you to people who only start caring once you have something they want. The first few months after I took over were brutal. The board didn't trust me, not yet. Most of the execs thought I was just Grandpa's pet project. I heard the whispers. "Kid's probably gonna tank the company. He'll fold under pressure. Let's wait 6 months and then swoop in and clean up." But I didn't give them the chance. I worked 18-hour days. I over-prepared for every meeting, every presentation. I dove into departments that hadn't been touched by leadership in years, talked to warehouse workers, delivery drivers, assembly line operators. I wanted to know how every bolt in this company fit, and I made changes. Hard ones. I closed 2 underperforming branches that had been bleeding money for years. I restructured logistics to reduce shipping delays by 30%. I moved our software into cloud-based systems and hired a young data analyst team that made our operations smarter and faster. Profits went up, employee morale went up, and the whispers, they died. Fast. One morning, while reviewing Q2 reports in my office, I got a message from reception. "Your father is here, says it's urgent." I stared at the screen for a long second, then replied, "Tell him I'm in a meeting." He waited 2 hours before leaving. No message, no note. A week later, I received a beautifully written email from Tanya. "We were wondering if you'd be willing to help Brayden. He's been struggling to get a loan to start his car detailing business, and you being in the industry, maybe you could help with contacts or even co-sign. We're all so proud of you." That was cute. They never once asked if I had eaten when I was working graveyard shifts at that hardware store, but now Brayden needed help. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the email to my grandfather with a simple caption. "The floodgates are open." He called me 10 minutes later, laughing so hard I thought he might choke. But it didn't stop there. My dad started showing up to events I was attending. At a Chamber of Commerce luncheon, I caught him trying to pitch himself as a strategic advisor to investors who clearly only came to meet me. Tanya began dropping comments on LinkedIn posts, acting like a proud stepmom. Even Aubrey started DMing me every few days. Hey, just wanted to say you're doing amazing. Thinking of moving to Chicago. Any tips? So proud to call you my brother. 3. It was wild how fast the story changed. I went from not one of us to we always knew you'd make it. Around the time, something unexpected happened. One of the senior VPs, an old-timer named Harold Crane, who'd been with Brooks Industrial since the early days, invited me to his lake house for dinner, said he wanted to have a chat. Off the record. I was skeptical, but I went. Over grilled salmon and bourbon, he leaned back in his chair and said, "Kid, you're doing a hell of a job, but you're about to hit a wall you don't see coming." What wall? Family. I raised an eyebrow. He sipped his drink. Your dad's not going away. Neither is Tanya. They don't want you to succeed. They want a piece of what you have, and they're gonna try to get it through the courts. I paused. On what grounds? Trusts, wills, legacy stakes? They'll find some dusty clause buried in a drawer somewhere. Believe me, I've seen this story before. I went home that night and couldn't sleep, so I did what I always do when my mind won't stop. I worked. I stayed up till 4 a.m. reviewing every document tied to Brooks Industrial, shareholder contracts, inheritance clauses, power of attorney files. I brought in a legal team the next day and told them to prepare for war. Sure enough, 2 weeks later, I got a formal letter from my father's lawyer. Our client, Mr. Richard Brooks, is requesting formal mediation regarding his 33% legacy claim to Brooks Industrial Group as the biological son of Walter Brooks. They weren't even pretending anymore. I brought the letter to Grandpa the same day. He read it, didn't flinch, and simply said, "Let them come. They'll lose." But I wasn't looking to just win. I was looking to end this for good. The mediation was brutal. My dad showed up with a polished legal team and that smug face he always wore when he thought he had the upper hand. He argued that as Walt's eldest son, he had a right to a portion of the company. Claimed I manipulated Walt into making me CEO. Claimed I was dividing the family legacy. I sat there quietly while he spoke. Tanya sat beside him in a sleek black suit, trying to look important. Braden sat behind them, texting on his phone the whole time. When it was my turn, I stood and slid a file across the table. "This is a timeline of every job I worked since I was 17, I said. "You'll find tax records, pay stubs, rental agreements, and school transcripts. You'll notice none of them list your name because I've never needed anything from you." Then I looked directly at my father. "You said I'd never be equal to Braden and Aubrey, that I wasn't worth investing in. Well, here we are. Now you're the one asking for a handout." Tanya tried to interject. "This isn't about money, it's about legacy." I turned to the mediator. "I'd like to formally submit an offer. If Richard Brooks and his family agree to permanently waive all future claims to Brooks Industrial and its holdings, I'll issue a one-time severance of $200,000. Take it or leave it." The room went silent. My dad looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. "You're trying to buy us out of our own bloodline?" He spat. "No," I said calmly. "I'm paying you to go away, which, if we're being honest, is what you've always wanted from me." They stormed out. The offer expired a week later. My grandfather died 6 months after that, peacefully, in his sleep. He left everything to me. And the obituary he requested to be printed in the Tribune, it said, "Walter Brooks is survived by his beloved grandson, Ethan Brooks, his only true heir in business and in a character. Nothing about Richard, or Tanya, or anyone else. Just me. I now run Brooks Industrial with a team I trust and a culture that reflects everything I never got as a kid: respect, fairness, opportunity." I keep a framed copy of that mediation letter on my office wall, not as a trophy. As a reminder that sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming everything they said you couldn't be. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You don't need to get even with the people who mistreated you. You just need to live so well that their names don't even show up in the footnotes of your story. And now, I write my story every day, on my terms, with no one else's permission. Update 1. It's been exactly 1 year since I became CEO of Brooks Industrial Group. 12 months since my father tried to legally claw back a share of the company he once said I'd never be fit to lead. 12 months since I offered him a one-time payout to walk away forever. He didn't take the offer. And now, he regrets it. A lot has happened in that 1 year. Our quarterly profits have more than doubled. We expanded into 2 new states, Colorado and Arizona, added 500 jobs, and launched an eco-focused product line that's getting national attention. I've been invited to panels, conferences, even Forbes wanted to do a young CEO disruptor feature on me. I said no to that one. I don't need the world to know my face. But there's one person who's suddenly been dying to see it again. My father. It started with emails, vague, polite. Hope things are well. We should talk soon. Let's grab lunch. Maybe just the two of us. I'd like to catch up. I miss my son. That last one made me laugh. The man who told me, word for word, you'll never be like them. Accept it and move on. The man who watched Tanya and her kids treat me like a house guest and said nothing. The man who tried to sue me for a company he never lifted a finger to help build. Now he misses me? Yeah, no thanks. Then Tanya reached out, through Instagram. Of all things. Tanya, Ethan, I know we didn't always see eye to eye, but your father has changed. He realizes what he lost. We both do. We'd love to have you over for dinner. No pressure, just a meal, just family. You know what's funny? She attached a photo of a freshly renovated kitchen in the background, like it was supposed to impress me. Granite counters, pendant lights, big island. As if my current place doesn't make that kitchen look like a break room in a DMV. Still, I didn't respond. Then came the real desperation. Brayden. Of all the people, he was the last I expected to hear from. He was always smug, always riding the high of being the golden boy. But I guess time and reality hits everyone eventually. He showed up at my building. That's right. Not at reception. Not in the lobby. He was standing outside, pacing, sweating like he hadn't slept in days. I spotted him from the top floor window during a finance meeting. I told security to let him up. Why? Because I wanted to see it. He walked into my office with slouched shoulders and eyes that didn't have the same fire I remembered from when he used to laugh while Tanya made me clean up after their parties. Ethan, he said, voice cracking, I need help. I didn't offer him a seat. He sat anyway. Turns out his car detailing business never took off. He borrowed money from friends, maxed out credit cards, tried crypto, lost everything. Tanya and Dad had bailed him out twice, but now even they were running low. He was drowning. And suddenly, the big brother he used to mock was the only one with a life raft. You have no idea how hard it's been, he said. I leaned back, folded my arms, and looked him dead in the eye. You're right, I don't. I only know what it's like to be treated like garbage by people who expected me to fail. He tried the whole we were just kids angle, said Tanya poisoned him against me, claimed Dad never let them see me as a brother. Maybe some of that was true, but at this point, I didn't care. Because when I needed someone, no one came. Not even once. I gave him two things. A brochure for a job training program one of our subsidiaries runs for struggling young adults. And a $20 bill for gas, I said. He stared at it like it was an insult. Maybe it was. But it was still more than he or his family ever gave me when I was living off 2 for $1 instant noodles and skipping meals to afford textbooks. 3 weeks later, I got a formal request. My father wanted to come speak at our annual board gala, as a guest. Apparently, he'd been telling people he and I were on good terms now, and that he was helping guide me behind the scenes, probably trying to fish for his own business deals. My executive assistant asked me how I wanted to respond. I told her to RSVP on his behalf, and decline, with a note. The guest list is for contributors only. That night, I went home and pulled out an old box I hadn't opened in years. Inside was the last birthday card my mom ever gave me. I was 6. She wrote, You're going to do big things, Ethan. Always believe in yourself. Even if the world doesn't. She never got to see me grow up. But if she were here now, I think she'd be proud. Not because of the title, not because of the money, but because I became the kind of man who doesn't need to step on others to feel tall. People sometimes ask me if I feel guilty about how things turned out, about freezing up my dad, about ignoring Tanya, about brushing Brayden off. But here's the truth. I'm not mad anymore, I'm just done. Done begging for a seat at a table that never had a chair for me in the first place. Done proving my worth to people who were blind by choice. They made their decisions. And now, they live with them. I don't hold a grudge, I hold the future. I'm building something now that matters. Not just a company, a culture, a legacy that doesn't leave people behind just because they don't fit into someone's perfect little mold. I've started a program at Brooks Industrial for mentoring underdog students, kids who come from broken homes, from small towns, from places no one expects greatness to rise from. Because I was one of them, and I know what one open door can mean, even if it takes you 20 years to find it. So no, I won't be inviting my father to speak at my gala. I won't be giving Tanya a tour of my office. And I won't be co-signing a single thing for Brayden. Because I'm not the same desperate kid standing at the edge of their dinner table anymore, hoping for scraps. I'm the one building the table now, and they're not on the guest list. Update 2. It was supposed to be just another day. Quarter end reports, meetings, a tour with a new intern class, nothing out of the ordinary. But when my executive assistant Claire knocked on my office door and said, "There's a situation downstairs," I could already feel it. I didn't know what the situation was, but I had a damn good guess who was involved. I stood up, adjusted my jacket, and walked down to the lobby. And there he was, Richard Brooks, my father, not just pacing this time, yelling, at the front desk. "You don't understand. My son runs this place. I'm not just somebody." It was ironic, really. I remember being a teenager standing at the edge of that man's dinner table, holding my school report card, waiting to be acknowledged. Now here he was, outside my office, waiting for someone to let him in. I signaled the front desk manager it was okay to let him through. My father turned and froze as I approached. "Ethan," he said, voice softer now. Thank God. He looked thinner, grayer, not in the handsome aging way, more like the stress-eaten, desperate, 3 mortgages deep kind of way. "What do you need, Dad?" I asked, straight to the point. He gave a nervous chuckle. "Can't a father just want to see his son?" I didn't say anything, just waited. He sighed. "All right, look, I need help. Things haven't been good. Brayden's moved back in. Tanya's talking about selling the house. I burned through most of my retirement fighting for what I thought was my legacy. I was wrong." That last line wasn't said with humility. It was said with calculation. He thought it would be the magic phrase that softened me. That made me sit down and say, "Let's fix this, Dad." But I just stood there. Cold. Calm. "You once said I'd never be equal to them," I replied. "That I'd never amount to anything." "I was wrong," he repeated, a little more forcefully now. "Okay, I see that. I underestimated you." "No," I corrected. "You never saw me. Not once. You didn't underestimate me. You ignored me." He sighed again and rubbed his forehead. "I'm trying, Ethan. I'm here now. I know I wasn't a good father, but I'm trying to fix it." "That's not what this is," I said. "You're not trying to fix anything. You're just trying to be close enough to the fire now that it's finally warm." He went quiet. And then, finally, he dropped the mask. "Look," he said, voice harder now. "We're family. You wouldn't be here without me. Whether you like it or not, I'm part of how you got here." I stared at him, long and hard. Then I said, "You're right." He blinked. I stepped a little closer. "You are part of how I got here. Every insult. Every time you turned your back on me. Every time Tanya made me eat dinner in the kitchen while your real kids sat at the table. You trained me for this. You taught me how to survive." I paused. "And I will always be grateful to you as a lesson." He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "You taught me exactly who I never want to become." Security escorted him out. He didn't resist, just kept glancing back at me like I was a stranger. Like I had changed. And maybe I had. Because that moment, when he realized he no longer had any power over me, was the first time I ever felt truly free of him. Not just in title, but in spirit. I didn't talk about it for a while. Not to Claire, not to the board, not even to Grandpa's old friend Harold, who still calls me every Sunday. But something shifted after that day. I stopped looking back. A few weeks later, I took a personal weekend and flew out to a small town in Oregon. Not for business, not for PR. There was a kid there I'd been mentoring online, 13 years old. His mom reached out after hearing about our Underdog Youth program. Said he'd been struggling with self-worth, failing grades, and a toxic stepfather. Sound familiar? I spent the afternoon with him. We talked about video games, sneakers, what he wanted to be when he grew up. He told me he didn't think he'd ever be enough for anyone. I told him the truth. Don't waste your time proving yourself to people who refuse to see you. Prove it to you. That's the only person who's going to be with you your whole life. He smiled like no one had ever told him that before. It hit me. This is what matters. Not revenge. Not rubbing success in my father's face. Lifting up the next version of me before he has to fight so hard. Back in Chicago, I made it official. I expanded our mentorship foundation. Launched 3 new programs in underserved schools. Started a summer boot camp where kids could intern directly in our manufacturing plants, marketing teams, and tech departments. I called it the resilience track. Because that's what it takes. To rise when no one's clapping for you. To climb when no one offers a hand. To win when everyone's already written your ending for you. Aubrey sent me an email last week. Hey, I know a lot has happened. I just wanted to say I'm happy for you. You deserve better. Always did. It wasn't an ask. Just that, a sentence of peace. And I appreciated it. I didn't reply. But I bookmarked it. Not because it was from her. Because it was real. I think people expect stories like mine to end with some big, dramatic scene. Me standing at a gala while my father begs from the crowd. Me giving a speech about triumph and revenge. But that's not how life works. Real victories are quiet. You feel them when you wake up without bitterness, when you walk through your office and know you built something with clean hands, when the past knocks and you can finally, genuinely ignore it. I don't hate my father anymore. I just don't owe him anything. And he finally knows that. Life after? I've got an apartment with big windows, a dog named Theo who hogs the bed, and a group of people around me who value integrity over bloodlines. That's family. And I've got a future so bright I don't even have time to look over my shoulder. So, to the kid out there eating lunch alone, to the one nobody claps for, to the one cleaning up after everyone else, I see you. I was you. And I promise you are not invisible. Not to the people who matter. Not to the world you're gonna change. And not to the person you're becoming. Just hold on. Your story isn't over. It's just finally getting good. Final update. I stood in front of the old house on Elm Street, my childhood home, once more. The late afternoon sun bathed it in a warm golden hue, but it didn't make it any less cold to me. The two-story structure looked the same as it always had, the same paint job, the same cracked sidewalk, and yet it felt smaller now, less powerful, less intimidating. I wasn't here out of nostalgia. It wasn't forgiveness either. I was here because I needed to finally close this chapter, for good. When I left this house years ago after graduating, I was nothing but a battered version of myself, cast aside by a father who treated me like the stain on his perfect new life, a stepmother who only saw me as competition for her kids, half-siblings who parroted their mother's bitterness. All I ever wanted was to be seen, to be enough. And when I wasn't, I became my own man. I didn't come to flex the fact that I now owned a multi-million-dollar empire, thanks to my grandfather's faith in me. I wasn't here to show off my success, my suits, my cars, or my penthouse view of the city skyline. I'd already done that the day I moved them out of their rented home when they begged for help after my father's second business collapsed. I came back for closure, for the final piece of peace. The door creaked open. My father entered it himself. His once proud stance was diminished, shoulders sagging, the crown of his hair now patchy and gray. He looked older than he was, the weight of years and regret etched into his face. "Landon," he said quietly, "didn't expect to see you." I didn't smile. I figured, "Can I come in?" He stepped aside, unsure. Of course. The house was quieter than I remembered. No yelling, no fake laughs, no spiteful whispering, just loud enough for me to hear. Just silence. My stepmother sat at the dining table, flipping through bills. When she saw me, her expression hardened. "You've grown," she said flatly. "And you've shrunk," I replied, sitting down opposite her. The air was awkward, tense. My half-siblings weren't home, off chasing whatever ambitions or disasters they were into now. That was fine. They weren't who I came to see. "I wanted to say a few things," I began, meeting both their eyes, "and I won't take long." My dad opened his mouth, but I stopped him with a raised hand. I grew up in this house feeling like an outsider, like I had to constantly prove I deserved to exist, like I had to earn even the smallest amount of decency. And the worst part? You, my own father, let it happen. You allowed me to be mistreated, ignored, emotionally beaten down. For what? To keep your new wife happy? He winced, but I didn't let up. I tried so hard to be part of this family, and every time I thought I was getting somewhere, someone reminded me I wasn't equal, that I was the mistake, the burden. I turned to my stepmother. "And you didn't just tolerate it, you let it. You made damn sure your kids knew I wasn't one of them, that I was lesser. You treated me like a cockroach you had to live with." She rolled her eyes, but even she didn't have the venom she used to. I've spent years carrying that pain, letting it fuel me, letting it define me. And for a while, it worked. I became successful. I climbed farther than I ever thought I could. And when I got there, when I finally had the power, you came crawling back, with kind smiles, apologies, requests. My dad looked down, ashamed. "Good. I let you in, not because I forgave you, but because I needed to show myself that your words never defined me, that I was more than what you said I was, that I could still be kind, even if you didn't deserve it." He finally spoke. "I was wrong, Landon. I see that now." "I don't need your apology," I said. "Not anymore. I needed it back when I was 12 and crying myself to sleep. I needed it when I graduated and you didn't show up. When I begged you to believe in me. Silence again. I stood up and looked around one last time. This house isn't my home. It never was. I built mine, brick by brick, with love, support, and real family, people who didn't share my blood, but gave me the respect you never could. He nodded. I understand. I turned to leave. Oh, and one more thing, I said at the doorway. You told me once I'd never be equal to them. You were right. He looked up surprised. I'm not equal to them, I'm beyond them, and I always was. Then I left. 6 months later, I was at my company's charity gala, a massive event held in downtown Los Angeles. Journalists, influencers, CEOs, young tech innovators, all under one roof, cameras flashed, music played, everyone was dressed to the nines, and I stood near the stage dressed in a tailored black suit, sipping whiskey and talking to Harper, my VP of operations and one of the people who'd stuck by me when things were tough. You ready for your speech? She asked with a grin. More than ready, I said. I walked to the podium, applause greeting me. I adjusted the mic, paused for effect, and looked at the hundreds of eyes staring back. Good evening, everyone, I began, voice steady. Tonight isn't about numbers, it's not about profit margins or market shares. Tonight is about second chances, about building something beautiful from broken pieces. I paused again. I came from nothing, and I don't mean that in the cliche rags to riches way. I mean I came from a place where love had conditions, where support had limits, where your worth was measured by how convenient you were to others. The room grew quiet, everyone listened, and yet I stand here today, not because I had something handed to me, but because someone believed in me when no one else did. My grandfather didn't just give me a company. He gave me faith, a belief I'd never had in myself, and that was all I needed. A few claps echoed. I've learned that true family isn't blood. It's who shows up when you're falling, who claps when you win, even if they're not in the spotlight. And I hope all of you have at least one person like that in your life. I ended with a nod. Thank you for being part of this journey. The applause this time was thunderous, and I meant every word. 1 year later, I visited my grandfather's grave every month, always alone, always in silence. He didn't ask for much when he passed. He didn't want a massive tombstone or an inheritance war. He wanted peace. And he got it. Today, though, I brought something. I placed a small frame photo on his grave, me shaking hands with the governor at an innovation awards night. I did it, Grandpa, I whispered. Told you I would. The wind blew gently through the trees as if he heard. Later that day, I was home. My real home now. A 2-story beach house overlooking the Pacific. Walls covered in art and photographs of the people I chose as family. Friends, mentors, my team, even my dog, Cooper. I sat with Harper and a few others, drinks in hand, sunset melting into the horizon. You think you'll ever talk to your dad again? She asked casually. I thought for a moment. Maybe. If he learns how to talk to me like a man, not as someone he regrets, but someone he respects. She nodded. And if he doesn't? I smiled softly. Then he'll stay a ghost in a chapter I already closed. The thing about pain is, it either hardens you or shapes you. I let it shape me, mold me into someone stronger, someone kinder, someone smarter. I used to think revenge was the best closure. Turns out, peace is. Not forgiving blindly, not forgetting the hurt, but rising above it, living well, thriving. That's the best revenge of all. And I'm living proof. Not the same boy they left behind, but the man they could never become. The end.